As Clara Whitaker stepped out of the taxi, the wind seemed to howl a warning. The sprawling estate stood before her, a monstrous silhouette against the dimming sky, its many windows like hollow eyes. The air felt thick with secrets, and Clara could feel the skepticism tugging at her, battling her strange sense of purpose. She had never met her distant relative, yet here she was, the last link to a family steeped in dark history. The mansion loomed, crumbling walls whispering tales of the past. Clara hesitated at the threshold, her breath hitching as shadows flickered in the corners of her vision. It felt as if the house itself was alive, watching her with an unsettling intimacy. Almost instinctively, she stepped inside, the front door creaking in protest. The air inside was stale, filled with a scent of dust and something older. Decay, perhaps. Clara wandered through the labyrinthine corridors, each step stirring up motes of dust that danced in the pale light, filtering through grimy windows. She had heard the rumors, laughter echoing in empty rooms, shadows darting just out of sight, but she was not one to be easily persuaded by tales of ghosts or spirits. Upstairs, she discovered the attic, a cavernous space cluttered with forgotten treasures. Boxes piled high, old trunks rusted shut, and an overwhelming sense of abandonment pressed down on her. Clara's heart raced with exploration. Each corner brought new curiosities, yet one particular section of the attic caught her eye. A wall that didn't appear on any blueprints, its surface strangely smooth and untouched compared to the peeling paint surrounding it. As night fell, the old house creaked and groaned, echoing with strange noises that felt too deliberate to be mere coincidence. Thumps and scrapes reverberated through the walls, like whispers from a time long past. Clara felt an unusual stir in her stomach, reminiscent of nightmares that left her breathless, dreams where the dead reached out for understanding, for recognition. Driven by an insatiable curiosity, she turned her attention back to the hidden wall. With careful fingers, she began to probe around the edges, running her hands along the cool surface. It felt as though the wall had a pulse, resonating with something deep within. Just then, she caught a glimpse of a narrow seam, barely visible to the eye. A trick of the light? No, it was real. Heart-pounding, Clara pressed against the wall. It gave way with a soft push, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside lay a stack of yellowed letters, delicate and fragile. As she unwrapped them, the musty scent enveloped her. Time-worn stories of her ancestors, whispering a tragic tale. The words spoke of a girl once shunned because her dreams stirred the dead. Clara's hands trembled, and a chill crept down her spine as the weight of her family's legacy settled upon her. There was something horrifying bound to those letters, a tragedy buried too deep to remain forgotten. She hadn't just inherited a home, she had awakened something dark and powerful. A sense of unease gripped her. Was she prepared to uncover the truth of the Whitaker legacy? Or would it consume her like those who had come before? Clara stared at the letters, her fingers trembling. The weight of her family's past pressed heavily against her chest. She glanced around the attic. Shadows pooled in the corners, the air thick with the smell of dust. "Clara?" a voice called from below, breaking through the silence. "Yeah?" she replied, her voice echoing in the empty space. "Are you okay up there?" It was George, the estate manager. His footsteps creaked on the stairs. "Just looking around," she said, shoving the letters back into the compartment. She pushed the wall shut. "I'll be down in a minute." "Fine. Just don't take all night." His tone was flat, but there was a hint of concern. Clara stepped away from the hidden wall. It felt wrong to linger, wrong to think about what she had just uncovered. As she descended the stairs, shadows danced along the walls, playing tricks on her mind. "Did you find anything?" George asked as she reached the bottom. "Just old stuff," she said, trying to sound casual. "Letters and memories." "Memories, huh?" He raised an eyebrow. "You sure that's all?" "Yeah, that's all." She felt the tension in her throat. "You know, this place has a way of getting to people," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Just a house," Clara said, brushing past him. They stepped into the parlor, the dim room filled with old furniture, covered in sheets like ghosts hiding from the light. "Still creepy," she muttered. "Great place for a family reunion, huh?" George smirked, but there was an edge to his smile. "Very funny." Clara rolled her eyes. "Just need to figure out what to do with it." "Right. Good luck with that." Their conversation stalled. The silence grew heavy. Then the lights flickered above them, making the shadows leap. "Did you see that?" Clara said. "Yeah, just old wiring. Old wiring doesn't make the lights flicker like that. It felt weird. Maybe it's your imagination. Not everything's in my head, George." Okay. He raised his hands in surrender. "Let's go check the basement next. Might be something down there." "Works for me," Clara said, feeling a pulse of unease. They headed toward the basement door. It creaked open, revealing a steep staircase. Clara hesitated. "After you," George said. His expression shifted from playful to serious. Clara took a deep breath and stepped down, each creak of the wood echoing as they descended. The air grew colder, damp and musty. "Why's it always so dark down here?" she muttered. "Because nobody comes down," George replied. At the bottom, they entered a small, cluttered room filled with old furniture and boxes. A rhythm of dripping water somewhere in the darkness added to the creepiness. Clara, peering into a box, found dusty tools and old newspapers. "What a treasure," she said sarcastically. "Look at this," George said, pointing to a vintage trunk. "Maybe there's something good inside." "Like what? Who knows? Money, family secrets." Clara rolled her eyes but walked over. George knelt and tried to pry it open. Suddenly a loud crash echoed from somewhere in the house. "What was that?" Clara jumped back. "Not sure. It came from upstairs." "What?" "Let's check it out." She turned and started heading back up the stairs. "Wait!" George reached for her arm. "It could be dangerous." "I'm not staying down here," she said defiantly. They rushed back upstairs, their hearts racing. The house seemed alive, shifting. Clara reached the parlor, but everything looked unchanged. "Maybe it was nothing," George said, looking tense. "Nothing like that makes a sound, George." Then she heard it again. A soft whisper, a low murmur. "Did you hear that?" "Yeah," he said, his eyes wide. "Where's it coming from?" "Maybe the attic?" Clara's stomach twisted, but she nodded. "We have to find out." They climbed back to the attic, the air tighter as they entered. Once inside, Clara's panic began to mount. What if it's the spirit from the letters? "Shut up." George shot her a look, but she could see the fear in his eyes. "Let's just—" The wall she had discovered earlier shifted as if stirred by an unseen force, a faint light illuminating the seams. "What the hell?" Clara whispered, stepping closer. "Clara, don't." But it was too late. The wall pushed open, revealing more letters, more belongings. But now something solid slipped through, a small box with strange carvings. "What is that?" Clara asked, bewildered. "I don't know," George breathed. They reached for it together, but as their fingers brushed the surface, the whispers grew louder. Clara felt a jolt, like electricity shot through her arm. "Whoa, back off!" George shouted, but Clara couldn't move. A rumble echoed, shaking the attic. The lights flickered again. "Clara!" The wall began to shift violently. Clara stumbled back, but not before the box flipped open. A strange force pulled George toward it as dark shadows poured out, swirling around his body. "No, get away!" Clara screamed. George's eyes widened in terror. "Clara, help!" But the shadows closed in, and Clara felt her own body freeze. The last thing she saw was George reaching out, his face twisted in panic. Then darkness enveloped her. Everything went silent. The house held its breath. Chapter 2. Shadows Rising. The darkness lifted painfully slow, like waking from a deep sleep. Clara gasped, her eyes fighting against the dim light. She blinked. Where was she? "George!" she croaked, her throat dry. Silence answered her. Panic prickled at the edges of her mind. Clara pushed herself up from the cold wooden floor. The attic was unchanged. Dust danced in the light, filtering through the cracks. "George!" she shouted louder. Still nothing. The oppressive air wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. She stumbled to her feet, glancing around. The hidden wall was back in place, but the small box was gone. Had it been a dream? "Come on, George," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. A chill swept through the air. Clara moved to the stairs, climbing down carefully. The house creaked beneath her with every step. "George!" she called again, voice shaking. "Where are you?" She reached the second floor and paused. Light flickered in the parlor below. She could hear her own heartbeat pounding. "Clara?" A weak voice called from the shadows. "George?" "Yeah, I'm here, I think." As she rushed down, her heart racing as she stepped into the parlor. George was sitting against the wall, breathing heavily, his forehead slick with sweat. "What happened?" Clara asked, kneeling beside him. He looked up, eyes wide. "I don't know. I thought I'd lost you." "I thought I lost you too." They exchanged a look, heavy with unvoiced fears. "We need to get out of this house." George shook his head. "It's bad news." "I can't," Clara said. "Something about this place. It's pulling me in. We need to understand what's going on." George frowned. "You found those letters. It's not good. We shouldn't have opened that wall." "Then what now? Just ignore it?" Clara stood up, frustration rising. Just then the lights went out. The room plunged into darkness. "What the—" Clara's voice trembled. "Stay close." George reached for her hand. They barely took a step before they heard it. A soft whisper, not in words, but a sound like rustling leaves. "Clara!" George whispered, fear choking his voice. "I hear it," she said, panic rising. "Where's it coming from?" "From the attic," Clara said. She hesitated, remembering the box and the shadows that pulled at George. "We can't go back. You know we'll end up there anyway." The light flickered back on. Clara turned just in time to see the attic door swing open, revealing a glimmer of light. "Something's calling us," George said, pointing. "No way, it's a trap." Clara stepped back. "Then what? We sit here? We find another way out." But as she spoke, the noise grew louder. A chorus of whispers swirled around them, drawing them back to the stairs. "Clara!" George grabbed her wrist. "We have to go." In that moment, the house rumbled again. An echo reverberated down to the basement they had just explored. Clara's heart dropped. "What's going on?" "I don't know." "Clara!" The whisper was clearer now, urgent. "We have to listen," she said, though every bone in her body screamed to run. They took a step toward the attic, against their better judgment. "Just one look," Clara said, grabbing the doorknob. As she pushed it open, a flash of light shot out. Clara stumbled back, shielding her eyes. "What the hell?" George shouted, and then it happened. The floor trembled violently, books fell from shelves and the walls shook. "Get down!" George pulled Clara down to the floor. A bright light exploded from the attic, illuminating the room. Shadows stretched and twisted like figures on a stage, swirling around them, blurring the line between reality and nightmare. "Clara, hold on to something!" George yelled. "Don't let go!" Clara screamed back, gripping his arm tightly. "Can you see anything?" "Not yet!" The shadows pulled at their feet, like hands grabbing to keep them from escaping. Clara felt a surge of panic. They weren't just shadows. They were shapes, moving closer, shaping into forms she didn't recognize. "Look!" George pointed. "It's them!" Figures danced around the edges of light, voices blending into a cacophony of laughter and cries. "No, no, no!" Clara shouted, squeezing her eyes shut. "What do you want?" A shadow stepped forward. It looked like a girl, the girl from the letters. "Clara!" George couldn't hold on any longer. "George!" Clara yelled. The figure lunged, and Clara felt a shock of energy course through her. She flew backward. George reached for her, but Clara slipped away, sucked into the light. "Clara!" he cried, but she was gone. The room returned to silence, the light flickering for just a moment. George was alone in the now empty parlor. "Clara!" He got to his feet, heart racing. "Where are you?" Then he heard it again. The whispering, but now it was clearer, deeper. "George! No!" He stepped back, trembling. Suddenly the attic door slammed shut. "Clara!" He pounded on the door. But another sound echoed behind him, a cry coming from the basement. "Clara!" He spun on his heel, racing toward the source of the noise. He had to find her. As he reached the basement door, it swung open violently, slamming into the wall. A shape moved through the shadows, a silhouette stepping forward. It was Clara, or what had once been Clara. Her eyes were hollow. "Help me," she whispered. The lights flickered one last time. Darkness swallowed everything as the door to the attic remained shut. George's heart sank. Clara. Then everything went dark. Chapter 3. The Echoes Within. George's heart hammered in his chest. The basement stood still, a gaping maw of darkness. "Clara!" His voice echoed. The figure in front of him didn't respond. It just stared, eyes hollow and empty. "Clara," he said again, dread pooling in his stomach. "Help me," came the whisper, barely audible. He stepped back, breath coming fast. "What happened to you?" The face twisted into a grimace, a laugh that wasn't a laugh. "You have to understand." "Understand what?" George felt his knees weaken. You're not her." The figure hesitated. "I am Clara, just not the Clara you know." "No, no!" His mind raced. "This isn't right. You need to go back." "Help me, George." Her voice cracked. "You have to bring me back." "No!" He shook his head. "I'm not doing this. Not again." "Do you really want to leave?" You heard the whispers. She stepped closer, the shadows swirling around her, the air thickening. "They know you now." "No!" His voice grew frantic. "You're not Clara. You're something else." A laugh escaped her lips, chilling him to the bone. "You can't run from family." A chill shot up his spine. "What do you mean? Do you not see?" Clara reached out, her fingers brushing the air like a cold draft. "It's always been about you and me. The house wants us together." "No!" He felt the walls closing in. "I won't be part of this." Suddenly the floor shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. A loud crash echoed from above. What was that? Clara's body jerked, and for a moment she seemed more like Clara again. "It's the house," George shouted. "We have to get out of here." She shook her head, eyes turning dark. "You can't leave. You're part of it now. You can feel it." "No!" He turned to run back up the stairs. "I won't stay here with you." "George!" Clara screamed, a mixture of anger and fear. "You're losing me again!" He stumbled, nearly tripping over debris. The rattle of something heavy echoed above. "I need to find a way out." But the stairs creaked ominously behind him. Shadow figures seemed to cling to the walls, watching, waiting. "Help me!" Clara's voice sank to a whisper. He froze. "I can't. You're not you. Look behind you." He hesitated, but turned, dread pooling in his chest. Long shadows flickered along the walls. Faces formed in the darkness, ghostly visages of the family he barely knew. "What's happening?" he breathed. "They're here for you." Clara pointed, urgency in her voice. "They want to show you the truth." With that, the shadowy figures surged toward him. "What truth?" George yelled, panic rising. "They want to tell you who you really are." "Get away!" He pushed through the fear, moving to the staircase. The shadows closed in, reaching for him. The walls trembled as if alive. "George!" Clara called, her voice strained. "You can't escape!" He sprinted up the stairs, but something pulled at him. Shadows weighed down his shirt, coiling like snakes around his legs. "Let go!" He kicked, but the darkness held firm. "There are things you don't know!" Clara's voice was desperate now. "Things about your family!" He made it to the top, throwing open the door to the parlor. The air was thick and heavy. "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" The shadows followed him, swirling around the room. Clara appeared in the doorway, her face contorting. "You need to listen. It's bigger than you think." "No! Get away from me!" George shouted, backing against the wall. A sudden crash echoed from above. Dust fell like snowflakes. "George!" Clara yelled. "It's happening now! You have to believe!" "What's happening? What do you mean?" "He's coming. The ancestor. He wants you." "Who?" His voice shook. "Who are you talking about?" "Your great-grandfather." Clara's voice raised, desperation edging. "He's the one who made the wish. The one who tied us here." A figure stood at the edge of the parlor, tall and shadowy, eyes glowing faintly. "George," the shadow spoke, "you are needed. What do you want?" George's voice was a whisper. "Join us." Panic surged through him. "No, embrace your legacy." The shadows twisted, forming a vortex of dark energy. "Get away!" He bolted toward the door, heart pounding, but the shadows surged forward, grabbing hold of him, pulling him back. "George!" Clara reached for him, her voice echoing in the chaos. "Let me go!" he yelled, fighting against the pull. Then Clara's face changed, shifting to something colder, something cruel. "You have to choose, George. Stay with us, or lose everything." "What?" He felt his body being dragged. "What choice?" "Join us!" The figures around him cried, voices overlapping, chaotic. He looked into Clara's eyes. "What do I do?" The shadowy figure moved closer. "The power of the house flows through you. Accept it." "No!" he screamed. "I won't!" At that moment, a blinding light erupted from the attic. The shadows screamed, retreating. "Clara!" He reached out, desperation spilling over as the brightness consumed everything. "Go to the light!" she commanded. "Find the truth." "No!" Panic riled up in him. "I can't leave you." But the force of the light pulled him, tugging at his heart. He felt his world unravel as he was drawn toward it, slipping from Clara's grasp. "Choose!" Clara cried, eyes wide, stretching her hand toward him. "In the light!" the dark figure shouted, shadows recoiling. Then everything exploded in a flash of white. George stood at the edge of a vast graveyard, mist curling at his feet. The air was cold, grave markers rising like sentinels around him. "Where am I?" "George!" A voice echoed from the mist. He turned, breath catching as he faced a figure, a man, tall and regal, with eyes that held centuries of secrets. "Who are you?" George swallowed hard. "Your heritage." The ground trembled beneath him. "Listen carefully." But the mist rolled in thick, shadows danced on the ground, and George could feel every heartbeat thundering in his ears. He was trapped. "George!" Clara's voice broke through the chaos. "Help me!" In that moment he understood. He had to choose. The mist closed in, the darkness swirling again, and then he saw the whispers, the shadows emerging around him. Would he join them? Or would he find a way back to Clara? Everything hung in the balance. Then the ground shifted and the shadows lunged, consuming the light. "George!" Clara screamed, and then there was only darkness. Chapter 4. Shadows of Truth. George stumbled forward, caught in a storm of mist and shadows. Clara's voice echoed in his mind, a distant plea that fueled his urgency. "George, help me!" "Clara!" he shouted back, panic rising. "Where are you?" The mist swirled around him, thick and suffocating. The shadows danced at the edges of his vision, flickering like candles about to go out. "George!" The urgency in her voice cut through the fog. "Don't lose me!" "I won't!" He pushed through the mist, heart racing. The chill wrapped around him, curling like hands trying to drag him down. "Tell me where to go." "Follow my voice." He pressed on, the ground shifting beneath him. He could feel the whispers rising, beckoning him deeper into the abyss. Faces twisted in the fog made him shudder. "It's okay," he whispered to himself. "Just keep going." Suddenly, the mist parted. He stumbled onto an open ground, a clearing surrounded by crumbling gravestones. "Clara!" he called, desperate. A figure emerged, pale against the shadows. It was Clara, but she looked different. Her hair hung limp, eyes wide and hollow. "Help me," she whispered again, more haunting this time. "I'm here." He rushed forward, but the shadows shielded him. "George!" Clara reached out, trembling. "You've got to listen. What do you need?" He searched her eyes. "Time is running out." "He's coming for both of us," she said, her voice a mixture of fear and urgency. "Who?" "Your great-grandfather. He wants you." "No!" George shook his head. "I'm not going to be part of this." "He needs you, George. It's in your blood." "Blood? What are you talking about?" The ground rumbled beneath them. Clara swallowed hard, fear flickering across her face. "He has power. The house, it's tied to him," she said. "And to you." "I don't care about power. I care about you." "Listen," Clara's voice rose, sharp as glass. "It's not just about us. This house, it has a history. Dark things happen here. We have to face it." "I can't." He took a step back, but the shadows closed in, whispering secrets that sent shivers down his spine. "George, they want you to understand." "Understand what?" "Why the Whitakers are cursed." Before he could respond, the ground shook again, and the shadows lunged. Clara jerked as if hit by a wave. "Stay with me!" "I'm trying!" He reached for her, but the mist thickened between them. "Don't let go!" He grabbed her wrist. The shadows clawed at her body, a dark swirl of hands reaching out. "Clara, fight it!" "I'm trying!" Her voice shattered against the roar. Suddenly a figure emerged from the mist, tall and imposing. It had an aura of darkness, flickering and changing shape. George felt its pull like gravity drawing him closer. "George," the figure boomed, "it's time to join your family." "No, get away from her," George shouted, pushing back against the force. "Join us," the figure said again. "You are destined to be one of us." "No, I won't." He pulled Clara closer, trying to shield her from the darkness. "George, help me!" Her voice cracked, desperation lacing her words. "Shut up!" The figure loomed, shadows swirling around his legs. "You can't escape." "I can!" George yelled. The ground trembled violently, and for a moment everything went quiet. Clara looked up at the figure. "You're not him. You can't be." "Clara, run!" George pulled at her, desperate and frantic. But Clara's eyes grew wide, a realization dawning. "No, it can't be." The figure stepped closer, a sneer forming. "It is." A loud crash echoed, shaking the ground again. A wall of mist pressed against George, and he felt himself being drawn back. "Clara! George, please!" She gripped his hand tightly. "Get away from me," he yelled, hating the fear that clawed at his insides. "Join us, George!" The figure's voice rang out, deep and compelling. "I won't." George fought against the shadows that tugged at him. "Join your family!" The figure lunged forward, reaching for Clara. Suddenly a flash of light erupted, forcing the darkness to shrink back. The figure was thrown aside. "Now!" Clara shouted, pulling him toward the remnants of light. But just as they began to move, the air crackled, and George could hear whispers rising and roiling in a frenzy. "Your choice, George!" the figure yelled, tempest raging. "Is your heart with the living or the dead?" "What are you talking about?" George shouted back. "Trust the bloodline!" The voices shouted, confusion swirling. George gritted his teeth, holding tight to Clara. "What do I do?" "Believe in us!" Clara screamed, her eyes fierce. "I can't!" His resolve wavered as shadows clawed at him. "I can't just choose!" "Make a choice!" Clara pressed, pain visible in her expression. "Why now?" Anguish rose in his chest. "Why can't we just escape?" "They won't let us!" she screamed back, tears forming in her eyes. Suddenly, the figure shifted, darkness swirling into a violent cyclone. "They are always watching, George." And then the figure lunged again, dissecting and splitting the light surrounding them. "Clara!" George called, terror ripping through him as he felt the pull of darkness trying to grip him. But just as the shadows descended, Clara's hand slipped from his. "No! Clara!" He lunged for her, but she was swallowed by the mist. The darkness swirled, and the last thing he heard was her voice breaking. "Find me! Clara!" George screamed again, but she was gone. The shadows closed in, laughter echoing as the light faded. "George!" He turned, heart racing at that familiar voice. "Find her, George!" The figure hovered, a dark silhouette. "Find her, before it's too late." "Where is she?" He shot back, fear twisting within him. "She's lost," the figure said, shadows swirling. "But you can save her." "Tell me how." "Embrace what you inherit. Accept your legacy." "No!" George spun around, feeling a surge of defiance. "I won't be part of this. Then you will lose her forever." With that, the shadows exploded forward, and George staggered back, his heart racing. Everything twisted around him, and he felt the ground give way. Darkness swallowed him whole, and then silence. In the cold void, he heard a familiar whisper, Clara's voice, faint and distant. "George, help me, please." And the mist began to close in again. Chapter 5. The Weight of Shadows. George felt the darkness swirl around him, wrapping him tight. Clara's whisper echoed, distant yet familiar. "Help me, please." It hung thick in the air, twisting his heart. "Clara!" He shouted into the void, but no response came, just silence. He stumbled, his feet moving blindly through the mist. The shadows flickered like restless spirits, taunting him. "Clara, where are you?" Panic clawed at his chest. Then he stopped. Footsteps. They echoed in the emptiness. "Who's there?" he called. "George!" A voice called back, low and raspy. It sent chills down his spine. "Who?" He turned slowly, scanning the misty surroundings. "I am here." The voice was clearer now, and from the shadows stepped an old man. He looked serious, a spectral figure dressed in old-fashioned clothes. "Who are you?" George demanded, taking a step back. "I am your great-grandfather," the man said, his voice echoing like a grave whisper in the silence. "I've waited for you." "No," George shook his head. "You can't be. I won't fall for this." "Fall for what?" The old man's expression didn't budge. "You must understand the truth of the Whitaker legacy." "Legacy?" George crossed his arms, defiant. "What does that even mean?" "The house is not just a house," the old man said, his eyes glinting. "It is a vessel of power. Your power. My power." The words hung in the air. "What power?" "It flows through your veins. You are a Whitaker. You can cleanse the darkness or succumb to it." "Cleanse it? From what?" George pressed. "From you?" "No, boy. From the shadows that haunt us. From the fate that has plagued our family." A shiver raced down George's spine. "You're lying. This is just a trick." "I am not here to trick you," the man said, stepping closer. "I was cursed, just as Clara is now. You have the chance to save her." "Save her how?" George's hands trembled. "What do I have to do?" "Embrace your heritage. Trust in the blood that binds you to this house." "Trust you." George took a step back, struggling to breathe. "What have you done to her?" The old man's expression softened. "It's not what I've done. It is what was done to you. To all of us." "Enough!" George felt a surge within him. He would not be manipulated. "This isn't real." A flicker of annoyance crossed the old man's face. "You think so? Then you'll lose her to the darkness. You will lose yourself." No!" George shouted, eyes narrowing. "I'll find her myself." Suddenly, the mist shifted violently, as if in response to his defiance. Shadows surged forth, forming shapes that whispered and sighed, echoing Clara's name. "Clara!" George yelled, reaching out into the void. "Where are you?" And then he saw her. She appeared through the thick fog, but she looked different, pale, as if drawn from a dream. "George!" Her voice was a mix of relief and fear. "I'm here. Clara!" He dashed to her, and their hands met, a spark igniting in the darkness. "Can you hear me?" she asked, breathless. "We need to go." But the shadows stirred, pulsing with energy, feeding off their connection. "You can't escape!" The raspy voice of the old man reverberated in the air. "Let's get out of here." George tugged Clara forward. "Wait!" she said, panic flashing in her eyes. "We can't just run." "Why not?" He felt the urgency. "Do you trust him?" "I don't know," she replied, glancing back at the old man. "But he says the house is alive. It needs us." "Needs us?" George frowned. "For what? To carry on this curse?" But before she could respond, the ground beneath them trembled again. Clara stumbled, regaining her balance. Shadows swelled, the air thickening. "Do you want to know the truth, Clara?" the old man said, voice booming. "It is time to reveal what's been hidden." "No!" Clara shouted, shaking her head. "We don't want to know what you have." A blinding light erupted, slicing through the mist, illuminating the contours of their surroundings. Figures emerged from the shadows, swirling in the brightness. "Who are they?" George whispered, anxiety creeping in. "Look closer," the old man shouted. "These are the ones who fell before you." As the light spread, George recognized faces, ghosts of family members long gone, their eyes filled with sorrow. "Please," one figure implored, speaking to George directly. "Help us end this curse. Set us free." "Set you free?" George's heart raced. "Why should I help? What did you do?" "Every generation brings its burden," another figure whispered. "We made a choice, and now so must you." "What choice?" Clara asked, her voice trembling. "Your ancestor made a pact," the old man explained. "In exchange for power, the Whitaker line would always face darkness." "Power?" George shook his head. I don't want power. I want freedom, the old man interrupted. You can't have one without the other. You must decide. The mist curled around them, and Clara's face showed doubt. What if we choose wrong? Then you will be lost forever, the old man warned. George felt the weight of pressure build. I can't just stand here. Choose, the shadows whispered. Choose us or the void. Stop, Clara screamed. Make it stop. Silence. They all stared, breath hitching in their throats. Then the ground shook violently. A sudden rupture split the earth and George lost his footing. Clara! He reached for her, but it felt impossibly far. George! She cried, voice echoing in despair. I'll hold on! The shadows surged around her, wrapping tightly. No! George lunged. Clara! Suddenly, the old man threw his hands up, a commanding gesture. You must choose now. But then, in the chaos, something unexpected happened. A flash of recognition crossed Clara's face, something deep and unsettling. No, it can't be. What? George asked desperately. It's true, she whispered, trembling. You knew. What are you talking about? George felt a cold sensation creeping over him. The old man's eyes darkened. It's time for the truth. No! Clara cried, panic in her voice. Don't! But the shadows twisted more violently, and the fog closed around them. Clara's expression turned fierce, eyes flashing with something not entirely human. Clara! George stepped back, horror creeping into his heart. I'm sorry, George. Her voice sounded strange, layered with shadows. It was never just your choice. The ground split further, revealing darkness below, and as the shadows pulled Clara toward the abyss, George felt a grip tighten around his heart. Clara! He shouted, reaching desperately. Don't do this! I have to. She smiled, but it twisted into something darker. George stared at her, feeling everything unravel. No, you're not lost. Embrace it, George, she pleaded, but her voice had changed. Embrace your heritage. And then she was gone, swallowed by shadow, leaving him alone in the chaos. The old man's laughter echoed through the air, haunting and relentless. This is just the beginning, boy. You're part of something greater now. George felt the darkness close in, shadows swirling like a tempest, catching him in their grip. No! He screamed, fighting against the wave. But as the echoes of Clara's last words faded into the shadows, he realized the truth was far worse than he had ever imagined. The house had won. As the darkness consumed him, he heard one last whisper, chilling him to the bone. Choose, it called, reverberating in the dark. And then, silence. Chapter 6. The Deepening Shadows. George felt cold. Darkness wrapped around him tightly, pressing down. The eerie silence was deafening. Clara! He shouted again, but only the shadows answered, swirling past him like smoke. Where are you? He gasped, his breath visible in the chilly air. He stood still, fighting to hear anything other than the echoes of his own voice. Help me! A voice filtered through the darkness, softer this time. Clara? He took a step toward it. Clara? George! Her voice, clearer now. I'm here! He rushed into the fog, heart pounding. I'm coming! He kept calling her name, desperate to find her. The shadows seemed to crawl closer, clawing at him. George, you have to find the light! Clara's voice grew frantic. What light? He stumbled, disoriented. What are you talking about? The light! It's the only way to break the curse. It's all shadows. He could barely keep his balance. Show me! The shadows pulled away, revealing a pathway forward. George hesitated. What did your great-grandfather mean? About the legacy? Forget him! Clara shouted from the other side of the mist. We need to move. Why should I trust you? He clenched his fists. You don't look like the Clara I know. It's me, I swear! Her voice cracked. You have to believe me! Heavy breaths filled his chest. Fine, but I'm not losing you again. He plunged forward, following her voice. The shadows writhed, whispering secrets he couldn't understand. What do you want? He yelled. Help us! Voices chimed, melding into one. He pressed his palms against his ears. Stop! He cried. Just tell me where she is. Join us! A form loomed in the shadows. George's heart pounded, sweat collecting at his temples. "Become one of us." "Get back!" He stomped forward, pushing it back. "Clara is not yours." "George!" Clara's voice rang out. "Believe in the blood." "What blood?" he shouted, feeling the ground tremble. Suddenly, the mist split open, revealing a flicker of light in the distance. He moved toward it. "Clara!" But something tugged at his feet. Shadows curled around him, holding him still. "No!" He fought against it, thrashing wildly. "Embrace your family!" The shadowy figures surrounded him. A lightning-quick thought crossed his mind, one he hated. He was one of them. The realization gripped him. Still, he pulled harder against the shadows, breathless. "I won't let this happen." "George!" Clara screamed. "Stay with me, please!" A surge of energy exploded from his core. It shot through the darkness. Everything shook, but the grip of the shadows only tightened. "Clara!" He reached hard, trying to grasp her hand. She appeared a few feet away. "George! Trust me! I need you!" The shadows around him roiled, pushing him back. Then, like a clap of thunder, the mist swirled upward. A shadowy figure loomed large. It stepped forward, revealing a face. Even in darkness, it was familiar. "Dad?" George's voice cracked. He took a step back. "George," the figure said, voice clipped. "I've waited for this moment." "No," George shook his head. "You can't be here." "I am here to show you your true path." "No," George shouted. "You're dead." "Am I?" The figure's smile was chilling. "That's what they all believe." "What do you mean?" "Clara is not who you think she is." "What?" George's heart dropped. Panic twisted in his gut. "What are you saying?" "Clara knows." The figure kept its eyes trained on George. "She has her own path." "No!" he gasped. "She told me everything." The figure laughed, a deep, haunting sound. "Did she? Or did she hide part of the truth?" "Shut up!" George yelled. "Think harder!" The shadows thrummed, closing in again. "You are tied to this place, this legacy." "No." Then someone grabbed his shoulder. "Clara." "It's a lie!" George screamed. "You're not real. You're not my father." The figure tilted its head. "I'm very real. Clara is a part of the curse, and soon so will you. Join us." "Clara!" George turned, eyes wide. "What have you done? What did you hide?" "I didn't hide anything," Clara shouted, voice breaking. "Listen to me." "But you're part of this," he pointed at her. "You know something." The shadows began to howl, swirling around them. "The truth is about to be revealed," the figure thundered. Suddenly the ground shook violently. A wall of earth erupted from underneath. Cracks tore through the floor, splintering their small space. "Run!" George shouted, pulling Clara. They dashed toward the flickering light, dodging the shadows that surged forward. "George!" Clara screamed as the ground beneath them began to fall away. "Don't look back!" he yelled. Just as they reached the edge of light, the shadowy figure lunged, grabbing Clara. "No!" George shouted, reaching for her. "Help!" Clara cried, her voice breaking. "Let her go!" George lunged forward, but the shadows pulled her away. "I'm holding on!" She fought against the darkness. "Clara!" George yelled, desperation rising. "Stay with me!" "George!" Clara's face twisted with fear. "Get out! Now!" He stumbled back, the weight of the shadows pulling at him. "I won't leave you!" "You have to!" Then a crack split through the air. Light poured down, illuminating everything. It pierced the shadows and sent them reeling. "Go!" Clara shouted, her voice steady now. George turned, heart pounding. He raced into the light, the shadows screaming behind him. Suddenly a blinding flash erupted. The figure lunged at him, darkness colliding with light. "No!" he screamed. Everything shook violently, spinning out of control. Clara's face faded, the shadows swallowing her whole. "George!" Her voice echoed in the void. "Find the light!" He hurtled into the brightness, praying for a way out. The intensity enveloped him. "Find it!" Then darkness returned, swallowing the light completely, and George realized he was utterly alone. Chapter 7. Fractured Realities. George stood in darkness. His heart pounded in silence. "Clara!" he shouted, voice cracking. No answer came. He spun around, but there was nothing, just shadows gathered, twisted and restless. What do you want? He yelled into the void. Help, came a whisper, low and haunting, Clara's voice. Clara! He rushed in the direction of her voice, but it slipped away. Shadows encroached, wrapping around him, squeezing tight. Stay away! George! The whisper sounded closer now. Find the light. Where? Where is it? Panic rose in his throat. The light! She urged, almost pleading. You! Suddenly the ground shook beneath him. Cracks formed, splitting the ground apart. Clara! He stumbled back. Trust it, she cried. You need to believe. Believe what? He shouted, fighting the shadows, pulling him down. You're gone. I'm alone. No, Clara insisted. You aren't alone. You have to break free. But he felt darkness tightening around him. I can't. Fight, she urged. Fight for us. He closed his eyes. Images flashed in his mind, her laughter, their moments together. He focused on that. I'm coming. I won't lose you. The light flickered ahead, illuminating everything. He charged forward, breaking through the looming shadows. George! Clara's voice rang clear now. Hold on! He pushed through, the light growing brighter. And then, nothing. He found himself in a small room. The air smelled musty, damp, walls lined with old books covered in dust. What? He stammered. George! A calm voice broke through. It was the old man from the shadows. Welcome. What have you done? George stepped back, fists clenched. Where's Clara? She is in the house, the old man said, his expression unreadable. But you must understand. Understand what? George barked. Tell me. The house is trying to protect your lineage, the old man continued. It demands a sacrifice. What sacrifice? George shouted, anger trembling in his voice. I'll do anything to get her back. The old man's face darkened. You don't know what you ask for. I know enough. George stepped closer. She's my only concern. A flicker of pity crossed the old man's face. The house will not let her go easily. You must confront the truth of your family. Enough! George shouted. Stop talking in riddles. The old man raised a hand. You will see. There is more to this than you realize. It goes back for generations. A growl echoed through the walls. What was that? George demanded, glancing around. It's coming, the old man replied. The reckoning is near. What reckoning? George took a step back, eyes darting. No time! You must! Suddenly, a wall of shadows surged, and the old man was pulled into the darkness. No! Come back! George yelled, but he was gone. The room spun as shadows poured in, and George felt the ground quake again. Clara! He shouted, but he could barely hear himself over the chaos. The shadows twisted, forming into shapes. Join us! Voices erupted all around him. Leave me alone! He stumbled back, heart racing. Embrace your legacy, they screamed as dark hands reached for him. No! George yelled, throwing his fists against the dark figures. I am not one of you! The ground beneath him gave way, sending him tumbling down a long, dark tunnel. He landed hard, gasping for breath. What now? He looked around, disoriented. The tunnel glowed faintly. A path stretched ahead. Clara! He called, voice echoing. Clara! George! A faint voice responded. Clara! He ran forward, heart pounding. As he reached a brighter spot, he came to a door. Please let this be it, he mumbled. He pushed it open. The room was empty, barren stone walls surrounding him. A heavy silence weighed down. And then he saw her. Clara stood at the far end, eyes glassy and distant. Clara! He yelled, rushing toward her. Help me, she whispered, almost a sigh. What's happening? He asked, fear gripping him tight. I don't know. She stepped back. It's all dark. I can't see. Hold on! He shouted, reaching for her, but shadows unfurled around her, grasping at her arms. George! Her voice trembled. Let her go! He demanded, running faster. Join us! The shadows hissed, pulling tighter around Clara. No! George didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, grabbing Clara's hand. They connected, but the shadows roared, pushing against them. Fight! Clara screamed. We'll break free! George yelled, staring deep into her eyes. Trust me! Suddenly, a blaring alarm sounded, slicing through the air, ringing louder with each pulse. What's happening? George shouted over the noise. "Leave! Get out!" Clara cried, the shadows clawing at her. "No!" George pulled harder. "Hold on!" But the darkness surged. The room spun again, shadows whipping like wind. The alarm screamed louder. "Get out!" Clara yelled. "Together!" he shouted, pulling her through the chaos. They rushed toward the door, but the shadows wrapped around them, squeezing tighter. "Go!" Clara cried, desperation in her voice. "I can't hold them back." "Don't you dare let go!" George pulled hard, battling against the grip of the shadows. "I can't!" Clara gasped, fear spreading across her features. "You have to get out! Clara!" The shadow swirled, pulling at her waist. "No! No!" The room trembled again. "Go!" Clara screamed, her voice sharp like glass. "Find the light!" George's heart shattered, but he knew what he had to do. "I will!" With one last surge, he fought against the darkness, breaking away. "No!" Clara's scream echoed as shadows took her. But George turned and sprinted toward the door. The alarm blared, growing frantic. He burst through, stumbling into a hallway filled with light. He leaned against the wall, panting. "I'll find you!" Then a deeper roar echoed behind him. The shadows bellowed, spilling into the hallway. He scrambled back, fear coursing inside him. "Get away!" The ground shook violently. Cracks appeared as shadows poured from the walls. "Join us!" they hissed. "Never!" George shouted, and he turned to run. Ahead, a light flickered. "Come on!" He bolted toward it, heart racing. Right before he reached it, he heard another sound, a voice. "George!" it called. "Join me!" He skidded to a stop, the unmistakable voice of the old man. "Stay away!" George yelled. But the figure loomed, eyes glowing, beckoning him closer, and then the ground shook again. The shadows screamed, and the light flickered. "Join me, George!" The voice was rich and persuasive. He felt the weight of choice pressing down. "No!" But the shadows stirred, rising higher. Then he saw something, an arm reaching through the dark. "Help!" Clara screamed. "No!" George shouted, anguish tearing through him. He hesitated, torn between the light, the shadows, and Clara's voice calling him back. "Choose!" The old man's voice howled amidst the chaos, and darkness surged forward. "Clara!" he yelled, but it felt too late. Then the chamber exploded in a rush of darkness, and George, caught in the storm, vanished from sight. Chapter 8. Breaking the Curse. George stood amidst chaos. The room swirled, shadows tugging at him from every direction. He gripped his fists, desperately trying to fight the darkness. "Clara!" he shouted, his voice echoing off the walls. Silence hung heavy in the air, only to be pierced by a distant cry. "George, help!" With renewed determination, he charged through the shadows, eyes scanning for Clara. He stumbled forward, weaving between the grasping tendrils that wanted to pull him back. "I'm coming!" "Stay away from him!" Clara's voice rang out again, stronger this time, as though she was closer now. George felt a surge of hope. He needed to believe she was safe. The shadows twisted, forming into a monstrous figure in front of him, its eyes glowing a menacing red. "You are part of this legacy, George. You cannot escape." "No!" he yelled, pushing against the dark force enveloping him. "I won't let you take me." "Join us! The curse binds you!" The figure roared, shadows swirling around it like a storm. In that instant, George realized he had power too. Clenching his jaw, he held his ground. "I am not your pawn!" he shouted. Drawing from every piece of strength within him, he pushed back against the shadows. "I won't join you!" he bellowed, taking another step forward. The shadows hesitated, drawing back slightly. "Foolish boy," they hissed. "You think you can defy us?" "I won't back down," he cried out, summoning all the love he felt for Clara. "I do this for her." Then, in a brilliant flash, he saw a way forward, the path to the light. If he could just reach it, maybe he could save her. He turned his attention to the flickering light in the distance, stretching out his hand toward it. "Clara, I'm coming!" He dashed forward, ignoring the shadows clawing at him. The darkness roared in outrage, but George didn't stop. The light grew stronger, brighter, illuminating everything around him. He could see Clara now, standing at the end of the hallway, ethereal and beautiful. "George," she called, a wild mix of hope and fear in her voice. "Hurry! Just hold on!" he yelled, pushing himself harder. As he reached for her, the shadows lunged one final time. Their screaming voices surrounded him. "You'll regret this! Join us! You belong here!" "Never!" he shouted, breaking free of their grip. He seized Clara's hand, pulling her toward the light. Everything collided. The shadows shattered around them, dissolving like mist in the sun. Then they burst through the doorway into a vast, radiant space. It was like stepping into a new world, one full of life, warmth, and hope. "Clara, we did it!" He pulled her close, relief washing over him. She looked up at him, but there was something different in her eyes. "Not yet, George. We still have to face the truth," she said, glancing back toward the pulsating darkness behind them. "What do you mean?" he asked, confused. "The house. It's not done with us," she murmured. "We need to confront the legacy together. Together." He said it softly, grasping her hand tightly. They turned back as shadows tried to spill into the room behind them. "Maybe we can break the curse," she suggested, determination rising in her voice. "Let's end this," George shouted, stepping forward. "We will break this family's grip on us." As they stood side by side, light flared brightly. The shadows recoiled, but they surged forward. "You can't escape what you are!" they shrieked. But George had something stronger, his love for Clara. "We are more than this," he shouted. "We choose our path." The light intensified, enveloping them as Clara stepped forward. "I choose freedom." "Me too," George joined her, their hands entwined. They took a step toward the darkness together. With a final roar, the shadows lunged, but as they did, a powerful wave of light erupted from George and Clara, engulfing everything in its path. Light met darkness in an explosion of heat and energy. George felt it surge through him, coursing through his veins. The shadows shrieked and squirmed, their forms distorting in agony. Then silence fell. The darkness faded, leaving only shimmering light in its wake. George blinked, looking around. The old mansion had transformed. The shadows were gone, the house now filled with warm sunlight. "Did we do it?" he breathed, eyes scanning the room. "Looks like it." Clara smiled, relief washing over her. But just then, a flicker of shadows darted near the corner. George frowned. "What was that? Maybe it's not over?" Clara's face fell as they both instinctively retreated a step. But that didn't look like the same darkness. The mist began to swirl again, but not with a malevolence they'd known before. It looked almost curious. "No!" George shouted. "Not again!" But that swirl started to form faces. Faces of ancestors trapped in darkness, their expressions shifting between pain and hope. "Help us!" one ghostly figure called, an ancestor from centuries past. "You have released us." "Wait, what do you mean?" Clara asked, stepping closer. They were bound to the house, George understood, a connection forming in his mind. They never chose this fate. They need our help, just like we needed to be freed. As more shadows stirred, the atmosphere shifted. "Help us complete the cycle," another figure pleaded. "Finish what you started." "What should we do?" Clara looked at George. "Maybe we can help them find peace," he suggested slowly. "It's our responsibility now." The shadows flickered, dancing with a mixture of sorrow and gratitude. George took Clara's hand. "Let's do this together." As they stepped forward, ready to confront the past and break the legacy for good, George wondered what the future would hold. Could they free others, or would they be pulled back into the darkness? Everything hung in the balance as they approached the swirling shadows, determined to put an end to the Whitaker legacy once and for all. Their fate was uncertain, and the journey ahead loomed large. Whatever awaited them, George and Clara were ready to face it together, because they had chosen the light. And now they would find their way forward. What would their choices bring next? If you've loved this story and want more, you need to subscribe now. Don't wait another second. Hit that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Share your theories and reactions in the comments below. I want to hear from you. And listen, this is the moment to share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to know this story. You don't want them to miss out, trust me.